In this episode, we talk about how the relationship between reservation and religion has been put under the magnifying glass over the years. We also talk about the human metapneumovirus or HMPV. But first, we talk about the world's largest dam being built by China. Hi, I am Niharika Nanda, and you are listening to Three Things, the Indian Express news show. Back in October, after 4.5 years of standoff between India and China, New Delhi and Beijing had agreed on the disengagement on the line of actual control, where 50,000 to 60,000 troops were stationed on both the sides. While both the nations have been making efforts for improving bilateral relations, there seem to be many roadblocks on the way. China has planned to construct the largest dam in the world over the Brahmaputra river in Tibet, close to the Indian border, and it has also established 2 new counties in the area that falls under the Union territory of Ladakh. These 2 developments are raising concerns for New Delhi. To learn more about the dam and the counties and how they will impact India, we have the Indian Express's Diplomatic Affairs editor Shubhajit Roy joining us. Shubhajit, can you begin by telling us about the Brahmaputra Dam project?
Yeah, so China has just recently approved the construction of the world's largest dam, which is sort of said to be the planet's biggest infrastructure project, costing around $137 billion US. And it's located on the Brahmaputra River in Tibet, close to the Indian border. And so this particular hydropower project is in the lower reaches of the Yarlung Tsangpo River, which is the Tibetan name for the Brahmaputra. And this dam is to be built at a huge gorge in the Himalayan reaches, where the Brahmaputra River makes a huge U-turn to flow into Arunachal Pradesh and then to Bangladesh. As I said earlier, that the total investment in the dam could exceed 1 trillion yuan, which is about $137 billion US. And that is sort of expected to sort of dwarf any other single infrastructure project on Earth, including China's own Three Gorges Dam, which is regarded as the largest in the world. So that is the sort of the situation regarding this particular dam. And in fact, this Brahmaputra Dam was part of the Chinese 14th five-year plan and the National Economic and Social Development Plan also till the year 2035, which was adopted by the Communist Party of China in 2020.
Right. And why is this dam a cause of concern for India?
Since India is a lower riparian country, essentially where it's a sort of a downstream country, China is the upstream country. So what India sort of is concerned that the dam, besides empowering China to control the water flow in Brahmaputra, the size and scale of it could also enable Beijing to release large amounts of water flooding border areas in times of hostilities. And so India is sort of concerned about this particular dam. It has always sort of been concerned about any dam that comes up in the Yarlung Tsangpo River, which is the sort of Brahmaputra River up in the Chinese territory. Along with India, Bangladesh is also concerned because Bangladesh, the Brahmaputra River then enters Bangladesh and then goes into the Bay of Bengal. So the route of any construction project of a dam in China on this river impacts these 2 downstream countries, or what are called lower riparian states, which is India and Bangladesh.
And Shubhajit, how did India get to know about this project? Did Beijing communicate with New Delhi regarding this?
So, interesting thing is that India came to know about this particular project from media reports itself. So, when Xinhua put out this report about the Chinese government approving the construction of the dam, that's how India got to know. So, India has sort of raised this concern that India should be informed earlier, not only informed for the sake of transparency, but also consulted before China signed off on such a huge project, because it impacts India as well. So The Chinese side obviously has said that, it won't affect the lower riparian states. It will not impact. They've done environmental impact assessment. That it's not going to cause any ecological damage. So all these issues, they said that they have taken into account and they have addressed those concerns. But India is sort of feels kind of blindsided by this sudden announcement of this particular dam, which it was not informed in advance. So it has sort of urged the Chinese side to take care of Indian interests and interests of the lower riparian state, which include Bangladesh as well, so that they don't have to face the economic impact or the impact in terms of flooding or lack of water in future.
Right. And what did the Ministry of External Affairs have to say about this?
Basically, the Indian side sort of said that, the MEA spokesperson, when he was asked, it has said that it has conveyed its concerns to the Chinese side over the mega hydel project, and in fact said that as a lower riparian state with established user rights with the waters of the river, we have consistently expressed through expert level as well as diplomatic channels our views and concerns to the Chinese side over mega projects on rivers in their territory. The MEA spokesperson further said that these have been reiterated along with the need for transparency and consultation with downstream countries following the latest report. And the report in question is the Xinhua report on 25th December last year. And then the MEA spokesperson went on to say that the Chinese side has been urged to ensure that the interests of downstream states of the Brahmaputra are not harmed by activities in upstream areas, which is essentially referring to Bangladesh and India. And we will continue to monitor and take necessary measures to protect our interests. That's what the MEA spokesperson said.
Shubhajit, another issue that came up along with this were the two new counties that were established by China, which fall within the area that falls under the jurisdiction of the Union Territory of Ladakh. So, can you tell us about that?
Yeah, so, on 27 December, again, the Chinese state news agency Xinhua reported that the government of the Northwest Xinjiang Uyghur Autonomous Region had announced the establishment of two new counties in the region, Heian County and Hekang County. Now, the establishment of these counties, both administered by the Hotan prefecture, had been approved by the Central Committee of the Communist Party of China and the State Council. So this was the report that came out in Xinhua. And so the Indian side, when asked about these new counties, essentially these new counties are in the Aksai Chin area, which is sort of in the illegal occupation of China. And so the Indian MEA, Ministry of External Affairs spokesperson Randeep Jaiswal said that we have seen the announcement pertaining to the establishment of the two new counties in Hotan Prefecture of China. Parts of jurisdiction of these so-called counties fall in India's Union Territory of Ladakh. He also said that we have never accepted the illegal occupation of Indian territory in this area, which is essentially referring to Aksai Chin area. And then creation of new counties will neither have a bearing on India's long-standing and consistent position regarding our sovereignty over the area, nor lend legitimacy to China's illegal and forcible occupation of the same. We have lodged a solemn protest with the Chinese side through diplomatic channels. So that's the Indian sort of response, essentially saying that it has lodged a protest with the Chinese side through diplomatic channels.
Right. And Shubhajit, how do you see the dam and the counties impacting the relationship between India and China?
Well, the Chinese side has not responded to the counties issue, but it has responded to the issue of the dam. Prior to India's response, obviously, it had already been asked, so it defended its project, saying that it won't impact the lower riparian states, lower reaches of the river. This basically adds another layer of tension between the two countries because, as you know, that India and China just completed the disengagement process in late October, early November. And since then, the effort has been to bring the relationship back on track. De-escalation is expected to happen now, followed by de-induction of troops. Meanwhile, the foreign ministers of the two countries and then The special representatives of the two countries have met, and they've discussed how they can cooperate on trans-border river cooperation and also restart the Kailash Mansarovar Yatra, also ease the visas for Chinese nationals wanting to come to India. So all these issues are being discussed. At this point, to raise these issues adds a level of complication that, at a time when the two countries are working moving towards normalizing the relationship to some extent.
Next, we talk about reservation and religion. On 9th December, the Supreme Court orally observed that reservation cannot be on the basis of religion. Justice B.R. Gavai and K.V. Viswanathan were hearing a challenge to the Calcutta High Court's decision in May to strike down reservations granted to 77 classes, predominantly from the Muslim community within the quota for other backward classes. Over the years, there have been multiple discussions, cases, and verdicts over the relationship between reservation and religion. To learn more about the connection between the two and how it has been put under the magnifying glass over the years, we have the Indian Express's Ajoy Sinha Karpuram joining us. Ajoy, can you tell us about the recent West Bengal case and how it talks about the case of reservations and how religion becomes a part of the whole scene?
So, the Calcutta High Court had a verdict last May where it ruled that the Calcutta government's reservations granted to 77 classes of people, classes referring to specific groups of people that are granted reservations. It ruled that these 77 classes, 75 of whom were Muslim communities, they ruled that this reservation was unconstitutional. These reservations were provided within the quota for other backward classes or OBC, and the court essentially ruled that the government had used religion as a quote-unquote sole criteria, that the only thing that the government considered to provide these reservations was religion, and that was impermissible. So the High Court, on that logic, decided to cancel these reservations and all the reservation certificates that had been granted under this policy.
Right. So we understand that a long-standing question here has been related to religion as well. So if we talk about the OBC reservation category, how has religion impacted that?
So within the OBC category, there's no express bar against providing reservations to religious groups. Article 16.4 basically says that the state can provide reservations in favor of any backward class of citizens, which in the state's opinion is not adequately represented. So it's a question of both representation and whether the class is backward or not under the Constitution. And on this basis, states have been providing reservations for religious communities under this OBC quota for quite some time now. Kerala, for instance, has been providing reservations for Muslims since 1956. And several other states have also followed suit, Tamil Nadu and Karnataka, for instance. And both the court and the center have weighed in on this idea of reservation to religious groups in the years since as well. For example, in 1990, the Third Backward Classes Commission of Karnataka, chaired by Justice Chinnappa Reddy, he submitted a report that said that Muslims as a whole could be considered a socially and economically backward class. And it was on the basis of this report that Karnataka, 5 years later in 1995, provided reservations to Muslims within the OBC quota. And even after the Justice Chinnappa Reddy Commission, the central government, in a commission under Justice Sachar, found that Muslim OBCs, despite the fact that reservations have been provided to Muslim OBCs in various states, the representation of Muslims within this quota was, quote-unquote, abysmally low in central government departments and agencies. And this low representation, the committee concluded, suggested that the benefits of entitlements meant for backward classes are yet to reach them being Muslim communities within the OBC quota.
Right. And the Supreme Court had also given a ruling regarding this during the Indira Sahani and others versus Union of India case. So can you tell us about that?
The Supreme Court weighed in on this in 1992 in the seminal decision of Indira Sahani versus the Union of India, where it essentially ruled that, where it provided a lot of clarity on the purpose of OBC reservations. It said that OBC reservations were meant to address historical discrimination that was faced by different groups of people, and that this historical discrimination was a multifaceted problem, that it's not just based on the religion of these groups of people or the race of this group of people or their caste, sex, place of birth. It's no one factor, the court held, that is causing these communities to be backward, but a sort of a coalition of all of these factors. You have to consider all of these as a whole to say that a certain group is backward. And it is here where we can sort of fast forward to the West Bengal case a little bit, where when they said religion was used as a sole criteria by the West Bengal government, that is a direct reference to the Indra Sawhney judgment, where the court held that no one of these factors, such as caste, sex, race, religion, could be used to determine whether a class was backward. It has to be a confluence of all of these factors. And when a state wants to provide reservation for a certain group of people, even if that certain group of people is a religious community, it has to consider all of these factors before it provides this reservation.
Now, if we talk about the scheduled caste reservation, has the question of religion been pertinent there too?
So the question of religion in scheduled caste reservations especially is incredibly pertinent from the very get-go. So just to travel back to the Constitution here, Article 341 gives the president, as in with the president on the aid and advice of the rest of the central government, but it gives the president the power to specify castes, races, or tribes, or parts of groups within castes, races, or tribes, and deem them as scheduled castes. And shortly after the Constitution came into force, the central government, through the president, issued the Constitution Scheduled Castes Order in 1950. Basically using this power under Article 341 to publish the sort of first list of groups that would be classified as a scheduled caste. And very importantly, in clause 3 of that order, it states verbatim that no person who professes a religion different from the Hindu, Sikh, or Buddhist religion shall be deemed to be a member of the scheduled caste. Now, initially in 1950, this was limited to just Hindus. But later on in 1956, Sikhs were included, and in 1990, Buddhists were included in this list. But that's as far as the list expanded from there. Essentially, and that order still persists to this day, basically limiting scheduled caste reservations to people from the Hindu, Sikh, and Buddhist religions. The logic being that the caste system or the Varna system is a largely Hindu concept, and one that, and so determining who is a scheduled caste would be limited to determining who is a scheduled caste within the Hindu religion.
Any cases, Ajoy, that might have dealt with this that you can share with us?
This 1950 order was challenged in 1983 by a cobbler named Susai, who is from the Adi Dravida community in Madras or Chennai. And this Adi Dravida community is a scheduled caste community. But he had since converted to Christianity. And he was trying to access a scheme where members of the scheduled caste community, I believe, were given free bunks in sort of roadside shelters. But he was denied access to the scheme because he had converted to Christianity. So even though he was a member of the Adi Dravida community, the government, as a part of the scheme, was telling him, no, you are no longer a part of the scheduled caste community because you have converted and your religious identity has now changed. And Christianity is not a religion that's covered under the scheduled caste order or covered under any subsequent orders. And so Susai challenged this decision of the government, and the Supreme Court ruled on this in 1985, where Susai essentially argued that even though I have converted, the world around me still sees me as a scheduled caste, and I still face the historical oppression and the inequalities and prejudices that come with that scheduled caste identity, even after my conversion. The court in 1985 didn't answer the question of whether a person would retain their scheduled caste status even after converting to a different religion. But what they did say was that even in this hypothetical where they retain their scheduled caste status, it wouldn't be enough to access benefits for scheduled caste. They said that a petitioner or whoever was claiming that status and was claiming benefits such as reservation or access to these schemes They said that they would have to prove that the handicaps suffered from such caste membership, continue in their oppressive severity in the new environment of a different religious community.
Right. And post this decision by the Supreme Court, was this issue raised again?
Now, following this decision, there has been surges in momentum and abrupt halts in this movement to include religious converts within the scope of scheduled caste reservations. For example, in 1996, the P.B. Narasimha Rao government tried to introduce a bill to amend the Scheduled Caste Order of 1950 to include Christian converts in the list, but that bill was never tabled. In 2004, the central government also created a commission under former Chief Justice of India, Ranganath Mishra. And in 2007, this commission submitted its report and found that, and I'm quoting here, by all available evidence, we do find the caste system to be an all-pervading social phenomenon of India, shared by almost all Indian communities, irrespective of religious persuasions. And the commission then also found that, or recommended that, even if a person from a scheduled caste community has had a willful change of religion, quote unquote, that should not affect their scheduled caste status.
Right. So, Ajoy, currently, where do we stand as far as religious converts and the maintenance of their reservation or not is concerned?
So there are a couple of cases at the Supreme Court where these questions are still pending, and there is a potential for change within both the realm of scheduled caste reservations and reservations for OBCs. One such case is the case of Ghazi Saduddin versus the state of Maharashtra, where like in Susai, the validity of the 1950 Scheduled Castes Order has been challenged again. In 2011, the court delivered an order stating it would examine the constitutionality of this Clause 3, which restricts SC reservations to Hindus, Buddhists, and Sikhs. And the court will see if it is constitutional for that to not include members of other religious communities, such as those belonging to Christianity and Islam. Though in April 2024, this case has been long pending. In April 2024, despite the petitioners objecting to any further delays, the court decided to delay hearing arguments in the case after the central government told the court that they were constituting their own commission to examine this issue, to examine the issue of whether religious converts should retain their scheduled caste status. This commission is being chaired by former Chief Justice of India, K.G. Balakrishna, and it's currently conducting public hearings in various states. And last November, it received an extension till October 2025 to submit its final report. So the case itself is waiting on the findings of this commission.
Right. And Ajoy, where do we stand vis-a-vis the provision of OBC reservation to a religious group?
The court is also considering whether OBC reservations can be provided to a religious group as a whole. This is based on a 2005 reservation policy from the Andhra Pradesh government, where the Andhra Pradesh government introduced a law to provide 5% reservation to Muslims within the OBC quota. This quota was struck down by the Andhra Pradesh High Court that same year, and similar to the West Bengal ruling, the Calcutta High Court ruling, the court held that the government didn't use objective criteria to classify Muslims as a whole as a backward class. This case as well has been pending for a little while. In November 2022, when the court was hearing the challenge to reservations for economically weaker sections, the court said that once it deals with this case, it will then hear the case of the Andhra Pradesh government's reservation law for Muslims. But that was decided in November 2022, and there hasn't been any movement on this case since.
And in the end, we talk about the human metapneumovirus, or HMPV. The National Center for Disease Control is closely monitoring the respiratory and seasonal influenza cases in the country and is in touch with the international agencies in the wake of the recent reports of an outbreak of the human metapneumovirus HMPV in China, official sources said on Friday. A senior official said, quote, "We will continue to monitor the situation closely and validate information and developments accordingly," unquote. Director General of Health Services, DGHS, Dr. Atul Goyal said, "The human metapneumovirus is like any other respiratory virus which causes common cold, and it could cause flu-like symptoms in the young and the very old. He further added that there is news that is doing rounds about a human metapneumovirus or HMPV outbreak in China. However, the data of respiratory outbreaks in India has been analyzed and there is no substantial increase in the December 2024 data and no cases which have been reported in large numbers from any other of our institutions. He said that there is nothing to be alarmed about the present situation. In any case, during the winters, there is an increased outbreak of respiratory infections for which usually our hospitals are prepared with necessary supplies and beds, doctor stated. He advised the public to take the general precautions that are used to prevent respiratory infections, which means if someone has a cough or a cold, they should avoid coming in contact with others so that the infection does not spread. He also said that people should follow respiratory etiquette and take normal medicines for cold and fever. You were listening to 3 Things by the Indian Express. Today's show was edited and mixed by Suresh Pawar and produced by me, Niharika Nanda. If you like the show, then do subscribe to us wherever you get your podcasts. You can also recommend the show to someone you think will like it. Share it with a friend or someone in your family. It's the best way for people to get to know about us. You can also tweet us at Express Audio and write to us at podcasts@indianexpress.com.